the reason I'm doing this, as I was saying, is I was specifically told to go and study Anakin Skywalker in episode 1 for a story that I'm writing. And so I did. I watched it and I tried to analyze what was going on with his arc and now what was going on and whether or not it was working. I actually found that I didn't think that it was. It didn't work very well, I thought. So, but we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about why and what we're trying to do here. So what was trying to happen with Anakin Skywalker in episode 1? Well, one question that you could even ask is it even necessary for us to have episode 1 with Anakin Skywalker? Do we need to see Anakin Skywalker as a kid? Arguably, we don't. But nonetheless, that's the decision that was made. We're going to have Anakin Skywalker and we're going to have Anakin Skywalker as a kid. Now, Anakin's story is the story, or I think is supposed to be the story of the fall. It's supposed to be a corruption arc. And whether or not a story about the fall is different from a corruption arc, that's an interesting question. Brianna and I were talking about that as well. We were like, what's the difference between a corruption arc and the story of the fall? And maybe there are differences and maybe there are not. Could be subtle differences. I don't have my terminology squared away on that yet to really say, but he's becoming corrupted or he's going to go through a fall. So the important thing at the beginning is to show him as a hero, right? Because he's this great warrior, he's this great pilot, he's supposed to be a hero. That's kind of what we knew about Anakin Skywalker from episode 4, the original Star Wars, when Obi-Wan is describing Anakin Skywalker in his hut on Tatooine. I wouldn't have ever envisioned I wouldn't have envisioned how it actually happened and played out on screen once we got to episode 1. But your father being a great pilot, we probably could have started with him as an adult and, already a great hero. But one thing that you can do is you can build somebody up to a hero. If you're going to do this corruption arc or the arc of the fall, go up to a corruption arc, or go up to a hero and then have them fall. So if you're going to take somebody from nothing, like is apparently what was trying to happen in episode 1, and you're going to take them up very high, you're basically going through the hero's journey, which is something a lot of people talk a lot about. So I think what was trying to happen here is they were trying to put Anakin on the hero's journey because you want to see Anakin as the good guy. So you basically do a whole good guy build up in episode 1, and then we get episode 2 and 3 where we're supposed to end up with the fall. Arguably, you could have spent more time on the fall, I think, if that's actually what you're supposed to be doing, by eliminating a lot of what's going on in episode 1. But nonetheless, that's what we're studying. It works. I can tell you a bit why. Tell you a bit why if you want. Oh, wait, what works? Let me know. All right. So one common problem with the Phantom Menace is that many people critique that they don't know who the main character is when they talk about this story, this movie. Who is the main character in Star Wars Episode 1? Is it Qui-Gon Jinn? Is it Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is it Anakin Skywalker? Or is it Padme, right? The Queen. Because we have all 4 of those are very central characters to the movie. We spend a lot of time with them, but which one exactly is the main character is not clear. And that's because actually we have several different storylines going on. And I think that this movie actually exemplifies a event-based kind of story, because we don't have across the entire movie any type of arc that a unified arc, right? We've got these several different stories. We're not exactly sure what the main character is, but they're all interrelated because we have all these different events, right? The movie progresses from event to event to event to event, with the blockade of the planet all the way through the saving the planet. You're going through event by event with all these people coming in and out. So I think that works. It clearly worked in episode 1's case because everybody wanted to know what was going on with Star Wars. So all the Star Wars fans showed up and watched episode 1. But it may or may not actually be a great story structure to follow if you're writing something. I'm not going to try to do that. I think a more traditional arc is better. So since we don't know who the main character is, can we actually say that it's can we just follow what happens to Anakin Skywalker, which is what I was trying to do when I was told, go study this to understand Anakin Skywalker's arc. Oh, the corruption arc. The corruption arc works. The corruption arc. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Oh, you were talking about the corruption arc for Anakin Skywalker. Well, we should talk about that. We're not. I don't think I'm going to get into that here. Brianna was talking about that. I do want to talk more about that because I'm doing a corruption arc in a story. Hey, Matt. No problem. Glad you're here. So, if we are talking, we're talking about specifically Anakin Skywalker here. So when does Anakin's story start? We don't actually meet Anakin until about 35 minutes into the movie, maybe 40, something like that. Between 30 and 40 minutes into the movie, you don't even meet Anakin, which would be a strange time to introduce a main character if Anakin is supposed to be on the main character. So the idea here, it seems like, is they wanted to take Anakin from a boy to a hero, so he can fall in later movies. And see, I kind of think that being a hero would have been better when he was an adult. You would have seen him as a hero as an adult, that we could have done that better if he were an adult. But nonetheless, this is the choice that was made. He's going to be a kid in this movie. And he needs to be a hero because we want to see him fall. So that means that we are going to take him on the hero's journey. All right? From slave boy to war hero in this case. That's what we're trying to do. And actually, Anakin's story is the same as Luke's story. That's episode, what we now call EP4. Because there's a lot of things that are very similar about what happens to Anakin and what happens to Luke, because they both start off on this desert planet with nothing really going for them. Okay, Luke Skywalker is a farmer, very classic place to start a hero's journey story because he's a moisture farmer. And then we go over here to Anakin, and he's a slave on the same planet. So both very low status kinds of people, and obviously the slave lower. We start with a slave boy here, and we're going to take him to war hero. So what happens to both Anakin and Luke? They're taken away on a journey where they may become some type of space wizard, and they end up in a fighter battle, a starfighter battle above a planet that they're trying to save. Yavin in episode 4, Naboo in episode 1, trying to fly around in a star battle and blowing up something that's in orbit. And when they blow up what's in orbit, that saves the planet. The Death Star in episode 4, the droid control ship in episode 1. So basically the same thing. That's why we're going from insignificant person on a desert planet to war hero by being a starfighter pilot, super starfighter pilot, and blowing up something in orbit. So the same kind of thing. We're rerunning Luke with Anakin. And obviously Luke's journey from episode 4 is the quintessential hero's journey. It's used in all the different writers' books that I'm reading. I got different ones over here. They all use Star Wars, the original Star Wars, as the hero's journey. So since that works, well, I suppose why not rerun it with Anakin? Maybe. He doesn't actually even interact with Anakin all that much. We're going to talk about that here. If Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn had been the same person, then we might have had a main character. And I think they were the same person for a long time. For some reason, we ended up with 2 Jedi. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think, could have done both of those parts. And been Qui-Gon Jinn as well, taking over those roles. So Anakin's story is the same as Luke's. So what happens? When we start, we meet Anakin. Anakin is a slave boy on a nothing planet selling spare parts to starships, right? And that's his everyday life. We talk about everyday life in stories. Well, especially when you're starting the hero's journey. So he's got a boring everyday life. Slave boy selling spare parts on a nothing planet. Okay, then what happens to him? Well, one day, a guy walks in. Okay, this is what's happening to him. To buy a hyperdrive part, Hang on. I'm trying to look at my note. I'm going to have to compress this a little bit. To buy a hyperdrive part, and with that guy is the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. And also a bizarre alien. So that's kind of like your inciting incident, right? Well, here we're just having this everyday life. All of a sudden, this really cool guy walks in, or he doesn't know that he's a cool guy yet, right? He's just some guy who needs to buy a hyperdrive part, but he's got the most beautiful woman he's ever seen with him, as well as this weird alien. So while the master talks to the guy about selling the part, he has a conversation, or Anakin, we're talking about here, has a conversation with the beautiful woman, right? After a few minutes, the guy comes back and tells the woman he is leaving because he couldn't buy the part, right? They don't have the part, not being able to purchase the item. But this just, this is your inciting incident, right? So then Anakin is forced to do some menial tasks and then told he can go home. All right. Anybody's got anything? Oh, we got spam. Okay, so he's told menial tasks and then he can go home. Well, now what happens when he's walking home? Well, he starts walking home and he sees one of the strange creatures, or the strange creature that the guy brought with him. The strange creature walking, or actually being harassed by his arch racing nemesis, right? So let's put that over here. I've got some of these notes typed over here. So when walking home, he sees the alien, the man brought with him, being harassed by his arch racing nemesis. Okay, immediately, Anakin saves the alien. So he goes in and he fights off Sebulba, says some things to him, gets him to go away, and saves the strange alien, right? This is also where he finds out that the guy is pretty cool. Has a sword with him, this lightsaber. And Anakin says, this means he's a space wizard, right? And the space wizards are really cool. And Anakin likes the space wizards and really like to be one. So we've saved the alien, and now he's noticed that the space wizard is exactly what he wants to be. And the hot chick is with him, right? So he really likes to, wants to hang out with these people. Dust Storm comes in. Anakin offers shelter. Right. He's saving the day again. It's too far away for everybody else, to get to their starship, right? So, hey, come over here and we'll shelter. So Anakin gets the suspicion that they are not what they seem. So the stranger arrives home, or he arrives home with the stranger, and he tells his mom, hey, look what I found. The stranger, the beautiful woman, and the weird alien. And now here we've got some parts that are not part of the story, but are kind of part of the plot. Okay, so Anakin wants to impress the hot chick, right? And he wants to do this by showing her the droid that he's making. Okay, now for some reason, he is building, of course, what we know comes to C-3PO. Now, see, that's a plot point, that for some reason, it's actually C-3PO that's being built. But I think from this, which I don't really accept, but the plot point here, the story point here is that he's trying to impress the girl. He's trying to impress Padme, and he's doing this by showing her that he can make stuff. And so this is supposed to be setting up that he's great at fixing things and making things, which is supposed to come as a story point later on. So I think from the plot perspective of world building of Star Wars, we're building C-3PO. But from the story perspective, we're trying to impress the girl by establishing some skill that Anakin has that's going to become useful later on. It's weird that he's building from the plot perspective etiquette and protocol droid that's fluent in 6 million different forms of communication for his mother, to help his mother, who is also a slave. Like, why does his mother need a droid that they use in etiquette and protocol situations for, ambassadors? Why is that something that he thinks his mother needs? And what he would think to build? You would think he would just build her like an automated vacuum cleaner or something like that. But none of that makes sense to me. But we're not, I don't want to get dragged into the plot. We're talking about the story here. So that's what we have done here. Oh, we also bring up pod racing. Not only can he fix things really well, but pod racing comes up. And he also, again, trying to impress the girl, saying that only he can do it. It is a classic way to try to impress the girl, right? I can do this thing that is something dangerous, but I'm good at it. So we have that moment. Inner Light says, I think we also have to consider the character of Anakin a bit. That's where his corruption arc really begins. The relationship with his mother is a strongly defining one because the stuff she has been telling him, that he was special and he knew he had no father, and that probably had some effect on the way she treated him. Yep, could be. He's got this destiny. It's another classic hero's journey kind of thing. We've got this destiny. Anakin was always treated as being a special individual, but just trapped in a negative situation. I think it's one of the reasons that he feels confident enough to talk back to the boss. Yes, he's starting off very confident. He's going to be what we call a willing hero. He's going to be a willing hero for the entire story. He doesn't ever reject the call. Well, he kind of does. We're going to talk about that. But for the most part, I consider him to be a willing hero because he is special and all that. Let's see here. Let's take that down. So now they come up to the discussion at the table, right? Okay, so his mother explains at the table that all of the slaves have a bomb in their bodies that will blow them up if they try to escape. Hot woman is surprised there are still slaves in the galaxy. Okay. This is also pod racing comes up again. And so he's talking about he's the only one who is fast enough hasn't fast enough reflexes as a human being to be able to do a pod race. And then he also, this is when he confronts the stranger and says, you must be a Jedi Knight, and explains that, yes, I've dreamed of being a Jedi Knight and maybe coming back and freeing all the slaves. And have you come here to free the slaves? But the stranger says, nope, I'm not here to do that. I'm on a very important mission. And I've got to get to the center of the galaxy. It's true, I'm one of these magical space wizards. I've got to get to the center of the galaxy, and this is very important, right? But the Padme, the hot chick, says that their ship is damaged and they can't leave, so their mission is in jeopardy. Well, now here is the exact great place to have Anakin, right? Because Anakin says that can be very helpful because he can fix anything. But the stranger says, we need this special part, and they don't have any money. All right. So we got no money. We need this part. So Anakin wants to help out the space wizard and the beautiful woman, right? So how can he save the day? Well, the mother brings up gambling. Okay, so we have the trouble here. Trouble. The stranger is on a mission. Needs the part. and has no money. That's when the idea of gambling comes up. Mother brings up the idea of gambling. And Anakin says that, hey, by chance, there is a major pod race tomorrow, and that he's been building this pod to race, and we could enter it. And his owner doesn't know that he has it. So Anakin says that, hey, take my pod racer, the pod, whatever you actually call it, the pod to race, go over there and hire me to drive it. Say it's yours, and then hire me to drive it. There's actually a very complex thing that goes on here about the negotiation of what's going to happen with Watto, right? It involves the chance cube and this, and you put up this, and I'll put up this, and then if I win, I get this, and blah, blah. And it's actually kind of convoluted. But the idea is that, well, if Anakin can win the race, then the stranger will get the part, and he will save the day for the beautiful woman, right? It will help her out, and they'll be able to complete the mission, and Anakin would be a hero, right? Because pod racing is so dangerous, the stranger kind of balks at that, but not a lot, which is kind of odd. He's, the stranger does briefly say, oh, that's way too dangerous. There must be some other way to get the part. But even his mother, even Anakin's mother is like, no, there's no other way. Anakin is here to help people. And even the mother, who you would think would not want the kid pod racing, but even the mother is like, no, he was put here to help you, and he can definitely help you. So this is when we set up the idea about the pod race and Anakin needing to win. And importantly, Anakin volunteers this, which makes this different from our traditional hero's journey, because most of the time in the hero's journey, we have a situation where the hero rejects the call. But we're being told that we have the call to adventure right here, or we could. It could have gone in a more traditional sense. Somebody could say, Anakin, I need help. Maybe this would be something Padme could say, or the stranger. I'm on this secret mission that we really need help for, that I really need help with in order to complete for the Jedi Order. You're the only one who can help us. We're going to have to do this by winning a pod race. You're the one who is good enough to do that, right? And it has to be you. And then Anakin would reject the call. Anakin would say, no, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. It's too dangerous, blah, blah, whatever. And then he would perhaps get a talking to by a mentor character. And then he would come back and accept the call to adventure and says, you know what, I will do this pod race. But Anakin is a willing character. He's a willing hero. So he actually is the one who brings up at that table, I know, I'll do this dangerous thing, and then I'll win. And then that will solve everybody's problems. You'll get the money. The beautiful woman will be able to get home. The mysterious stranger will be able to complete his mission. That would be great. Now, you see what's happening here? That when I'm talking about the rejection of the call to adventure, a lot of people would say the rejection of the call to adventure is when he's upset at leaving his mother later on in this movie. But it's not. The adventure is happening right now. This is sort of the weird structure of this movie. We've got a mini story, a whole mini arc that's trying to be compressed into what's going on here in Tatooine. When you're thinking about this from Anakin's perspective, the adventure is, hey, can I win this pod race, right? I've been this boring everyday life. The stranger, the beautiful woman shows up. They're mysterious. They're cool. They're in trouble. And I'm the only one that can help by doing this dangerous thing. See if anybody has any comments here. I'm also curious exactly how a space wizard frees slaves with bombs planted in them. Yeah, that's also a weird part, I think, as far as plotting goes. Oh, we need some reason why they can't just leave the planet. Excuse me. Well, we got bombs in them, right? Again, Anakin is relying on that specialness destiny. The character comes across as prideful, sometimes arrogant, and downright bratty sometimes. Okay, yeah, it's definitely playing up the specialness. We are very, he's a willing hero, he's special, and that's why his mom is probably so happy to have him go off and do this dangerous thing. Oh, and that one. So Anakin is volunteering. All right. So that's when we start to have the stranger go on. Okay, so the stranger in the movie go and talk to Watto and start all of the strange negotiation over that. But that's, Anakin isn't there for that. The pod race is happening the next morning. Now, again, in a more traditional story, Anakin would need some help to complete the pod race that he would get from a mentor. And if this were a hero's journey arc, it's trying to be a hero's journey. It's trying to tell you an adventure, but it's missing a lot of the pieces here. Anakin also needs no mentor in order to successfully accomplish his task, his dangerous task the next day, the pod race. In a traditional story, Qui-Gon Jinn should have been his mentor there, because Anakin should realize, hey, that Qui-Gon Jinn recognizes that Anakin is special, which he does. He's force sensitive. He's about to go and do this dangerous thing. But what if Anakin had never won a pod race before? He's got to win this pod race. What if he had never even finished a pod race, never even completed one? He was getting very, very close. He was like 95% of the way to actually being able to win pod races or even finish pod races. But he's not quite there yet. He's not quite there. So that could be another reason why he would say, no, I can't do this. I've never actually even won a pod race. I've never even finished a pod race. I'm very good at it. I'm dangerous, but I haven't done it. I know what you're thinking. Just a minute. And if that were the case, he says, okay, I'll do it. He would need a little bit of help to help him get over that last bit of whatever it was that he's missing in order to complete the race. It could be pilot training. If he's going to go on and be a pilot, it could be a little bit more pilot training. It could be something to do with fixing things up. Or what should have happened, since he's going to go on and be a space wizard, right? He needs a little bit of magic. It's magic that's allowing him to do the pod racing anyway, right? So he needs a little bit of help to get a little bit of extra magic in order to complete the pod race. That is something that Qui-Gon Jinn could help him with. We're in this very compressed timeline because this is happening the next morning. But that evening, we could have had a scene with Qui-Gon Jinn as his mentor, helping Anakin with his force powers just a little bit to help him, to give him some information that he needs for the race tomorrow, right? He hasn't ever done it. But and Qui-Gon's thinking, if I just teach you this and you learn just a little bit, then you will be able to do it. That's how a traditional arc would have gone. Anakin needs no help winning tomorrow. Now, oddly, I know what some of you were thinking, that he hasn't ever finished a pod race before. He hasn't ever won. He hasn't even finished one. That doesn't come up until the next day when he is talking to the beautiful woman. And that's used as a point to try to get the beautiful woman to prevaricate, which she does a little bit. There's very little prevarication on any part of the characters, but that could have been a major point. You would think you would have clued in Qui-Gon Jinn on that. Well, actually, I've never won. Then you could have had that relationship start to develop between them, and that, oh, he needs Qui-Gon's help in order to do these things. So Anakin needs no mentor. Doesn't tell stranger that he has never finished a race. I think that's odd. What do you think? Good morning, Keith. Good morning. Great to see you here. A mentor or a magical or supernatural being? Jar Jar Binks, possibly? Well, possibly. Jar Jar Binks isn't really connected to Anakin's story here. We could probably drop him. The mentions that we've got here, we're talking about that there is this alien out there. He brings a strange alien with him. That really doesn't have a whole lot of impact on Anakin's story. Now, he does save Jar Jar from Sebulba, right? But you could change that around. You could change that around, and you would have him save Padme, right? Well, I know we can say Jar Jar, I think, but I was trying to use the different, like, the archetypes. We got the stranger, we've got the weird alien, we have the beautiful woman. We got space wizards. Like, what's going on here, kind of in a roundabout way. But I think that could have improved the story if we were just trying to tell Anakin's story. Having Qui-Gon Jinn work with him before the race would have been better, and and have this be a lot more danger. Have there be a lot more prevarication about what's about to go on. But this whole thing is going on inside of a whole nother movie, right? So that's why I think that it's structured weird. So the weird alien does accidentally damage the rival's pod racer. Yeah. Right. He says like, oops, or something like that. So you're right. That does happen. But, I'm going to have to remember exactly how that goes. But if this is Anakin's story and Anakin has to win the pod race, then it needs to be because of Anakin. We don't want the Anakin to win the pod race because of something that the weird alien did, right? That's why I'm saying this is more event driven, because yeah, we're going to have like the alien damaging something. If this is Anakin's story and he's got to win this pod race, there's got to be Anakin who wins the pod race. It's got to be all on his ability, I think. So he's never finished a race. You find this out? That seems like a majorly important thing. Find this out when he tells the beautiful woman, right? Oh, they did before that. The Qui-Gon did get to talk to him before the race that night. I skipped that part a little bit, but he doesn't really tell him anything significant that's going to help him the next day. He does talk about that's when he takes the blood sample or something like that, but it's not something that's really driving anything that happens in the pod race. That helps him, and it should have been. It would have strengthened that scene if it was. Anakin promises, though, that he will win this time. And then, oh, no, the arch nemesis, that was Sebulba who damaged Anakin's pod racer, right? Wasn't that? Sebulba comes over. Now, see, that's a good one. Sebulba, the arch nemesis alien, comes over and damages Anakin's pod racer, which is something that he has to solve. It's not entirely, though. There are a few events in the pod race itself where outside elements get Anakin out of a jam or two. And that isn't entirely a problem, by the way. So you're right. So actually, an important part, or one of my favorite parts of the hero's journey, actually, is help from outside. When the hero does need a little bit of help from outside in order to complete the mission, and this is done beautifully in the original Star Wars. It's one of my favorite scenes. Luke Skywalker is going down the trench. Everybody else has been shot and blown up. Darth Vader has Luke Skywalker in his sights, and he's being flanked by the two other starfighters. Luke is in a bad situation. He can't get out of this by himself. And then, boom, the Millennium Falcon shows up. Han Solo and Chewbacca are back. They take out the TIE fighters, give Luke some help, and then Luke goes and takes out the Death Star. Han Solo can't take out the Death Star. That would mess up the story. It has to be Luke. But Luke needs a little bit of help. And Han Solo, you've probably forgotten about, and all of a sudden he's back. So that, using something like that in the pod racer, if you're going to have an outside force that's going to help him, then you would do it that way. You would have him get you would have him get to like the 93% point win, needs a little bit of help. There's some outside thing that helps him, and then what actually puts him over the edge to victory, whatever he was taught by Qui-Gon Jinn that night, and that's what allows him to win. I think that would be the structure for what the structure would be if we're trying to play out the hero's journey inside the pod race here, which I think they were trying to do, but there was so much else going on in this movie, they didn't really do that. No, but that's right. I think it was Sebulba who sabotaged Anakin's pod racer. And he does have to fix that because the race begins, and what happens? Okay, so the race begins, and because of that, Anakin's pod racer does not start. Problem. And this might have been because of the sabotage. That's right. So what do we do here? We do have a good element here. Anakin uses his special abilities. Now, Anakin has 3 major special abilities because he's that special. He's an excellent pilot, he's excellent at building and fixing things, and he's got magic powers. So in this case, he's going to use fixing thing magic special power. And he uses his fixing things magic power and is able to, or special power, and is able to get the pod racer up and then starts the race. And then we go through the race. And there's all kinds of, hijinks, things like that. It's a long sequence where we're actually racing around here. And that would be fine, especially if it were like the climax of the movie here and the story, and we were moving through the hero's journey, whipping around here. And of course, it's a very exciting race. We're shot at by sand people, blah, blah, blah. Anakin wins. I think we could have come up with a better way for Anakin to win based on what we were talking about here. The outside help being significant, done in the hero's journey way, and then also the that it needed to be his magic power, his force use that allowed him to win at the end of the day that Qui-Gon had taught him. But anyway, it's an exciting race, all right? So what happens? Well, beautiful woman is very impressed. Right? So you get the girl, right? Classic stuff there. Beautiful woman's very impressed. Wins money. And this money is enough to, get parked and save the day. Stranger is going to complete his mission. At this point, you would say Anakin is the hero, right? If he had done all those things, that would complete Anakin's hero's journey. But we got this weird story within a story here and we're cutting short this hero's journey inside. Because ultimately, like I said, we're going to take Anakin to hero because of being a starfighter and blowing up stuff over Naboo. But he's a hero right here, and his reward is greater than he'd ever imagined. Because he is set free. Not only did you help everybody else out, but you're free as well. Oh, his mother is proud. We can add that. Mother is proud. But you could see how this would be the end of a movie, how this could be the end of a story arc right here. That sounds like the end of a movie, right? So his mother's proud. And that he's having this fantastic opportunity. Stranger is going to take the boy. Not only are you free, you're going to get to become a space wizard. That's your reward, right? Mother is shocked. And, all of your dreams are coming true now. Again, doesn't this sound like the end of a movie? This sounds like the end of a movie. We got confirmation on Sebulba. Yep. I'm sure a weird alien did sabotage Sebulba's pod too, because that's why Sebulba's pod blew up in the end. It was outside help, but it was more subtle than in episode 4. Yeah, I think Jar Jar did do something to it, pod racer. But yeah, Sebulba did come over, to try to cheat. So that was significant, and you got to get that. Or a weird alien loosened something and fell off because he caused Sebulba's pod explosion. Sebulba's pod explosion, something like that. Yeah, it was something like that. Now, here things get weird again because we have the conclusion of this arc here, but the movie's still going on. This was like right at the midpoint of the movie and stuff like that. So now we have a problem. And the problem is the mother is not free, right? Then because Anakin asks about his mom, mom not free. This is when Anakin is sad for a short time. And mom tells him to go. This right here, all to adventure. This is where they're trying to insert a call to adventure. And that's what people say, well, no, if Anakin Skywalker is going to be a hero, the call to adventure is hey, come be a space wizard, right? And Anakin's like, no, I can't become a space wizard. He's got a weird line. He says, I don't want things to change. Like, what are you talking about? You don't want things to change. You were just saying at the dinner table last night how you dreamed of being a space wizard and freeing all the slaves and becoming a powerful warrior and all of this. Of course you want things to change. You don't want to stay a slave forever. That was a weird line. He's trying to say something about his mother, like, I don't want us to be apart. That would have been a better line, because then you would understand, why is he so upset? Why is he rejecting the call to adventure? It's really weird for him to say, I don't want things to change. He should have said, I don't want to leave you, Mom, or I don't want us to be apart, or I want us to still be a family, or something like that. That would have made more sense. Not, I don't want things to change. Because it's supposed to be about the mother. And that's supposed to be his rejection of the call to adventure in the greater scheme of things. But it lasts for like 20 seconds. He says, I don't want things to change, and kind of has a sad face. And Mom says, go anyway, right? And he's like, okay. And then we're going to leave and go on the space adventure. It's weird in the context of what the hero's journey that we were trying to put in there, with this pod race thing, because his reward for doing what he was trying to do, his reward for successfully doing what he was supposed to do, was to be free, right? That was his reward. So in effect, he's rejecting his reward. The rejection of the call to adventure is the rejection of the reward of his winning the pod race, which is what he was supposed to do in order to become a hero and save the day. That's pretty weird. But nonetheless, that's how it's set up here. Anakin is sad, not call to adventure. It's a reaffirmation of his link to specialness, coddling of destiny. Okay. A lot of people identify the part where he says, you can go. And he says, or when Qui-Gon says, you can go. And he says, turns around to his mother and says, I don't want things to change, as being his rejection of the call to adventure, right? He is still special on Tatooine. He may not be special among the space wizards. Well, has he been told? I don't think he's been told yet that he's got, I mean, I don't really like midi-chlorians from the plot perspective and story building and world building part of this. But yeah, I don't think he's been told that, hey, you got more of these midi-chlorians than even Yoda, the most powerful of all the space wizards. Mom tells him to go. Now, here, and that's why I say this pod racer part here is Anakin's main story arc. That's what Anakin's story arc was supposed to be. I wouldn't have even done this story arc. Like I said, I would have done a different movie where Anakin is already an adult and he is a powerful hero, and then try to do the corruption arc in the fall. But we got to tell this mini story here in the middle of this other movie that's where Anakin can save the day. Because the weird part is, as soon as he leaves this planet, he loses all agency in the story. Like, we're just focused on Anakin. Anakin stops being agentive in this story at this point. And that's why it's difficult from a story perspective for me to say that Anakin's story, yeah, he's in scenes, he does things, it's an event-driven movie, like we were saying. But Anakin's story doesn't really continue beyond this point. He's going to do some other things, but he's not agentive in those things that he does. And that's why the hero's journey of Anakin from Tatooine to blowing something up in a starfighter around a planet, the exact same thing that Luke Skywalker did. Luke Skywalker's story is so much better than Anakin Skywalker's story, because Luke stays agentive because it's his story throughout the entire time, from the desert planet all the way up to blowing up the Death Star. Anakin does not. So what happens after he says Mom tells him to go? He goes with the stranger to become a space wizard. So, see the part Anakin 3PO, he says goodbye to C-3PO, leaves his room. That's not important to the story, the core story items here. Okay. So when do we catch up with Anakin again? Of course, they are attacked by this major evil warrior, Darth Maul, right? And they only nearly escape and get back into the starship. What are we doing on time here? I kind of want to finish this, so we'll just keep going. I'll just keep going anyway. They're nearly escaped, but they only nearly escape. Anakin's not agentive in that. Anakin is introduced to Obi-Wan Kenobi right here, and they fly away. But it's a brief interaction that he and Obi-Wan Kenobi have. Like I said, there is not a lot of interaction there. If I would have liked to have seen more development between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi developing their relationship in general. But there isn't a lot of that here. We do see that, Anakin meets Obi, but that's not important to the story here. It's a plot world building point later on. Obi-Wan, but we're now outside of a story arc as far as Anakin goes. Anakin talks to a beautiful woman on the starship, and he's a little bit depressed. She's also a bit depressed because of what's going on with the war, so they have a little bit of bonding element over this. He hands her something and says that he, carved it for her, and so I hope that she'll remember me. So we're having this touching moment here on the starship, and beautiful woman says things are going to change once we get to the galactic core. Now we get to Coruscant, and what happens with Anakin? Well, they get divided. All the characters get divided, but Anakin says, I'm going to go over to the Jedi Temple to actually officially become an apprentice, to become a space wizard, but beautiful woman's not there, and he just wanted to say goodbye, so then he leaves. Now, we get to the weird part at the Jedi Council again. Jedi Council tests Anakin. They want to know if he's going to be able to become a space wizard, right? So this is what he always wanted, right? And you got to pass this test in order to become a space wizard. If you're telling a story, what should happen here? Anakin should fail this test. Because if we're starting something over, we're basically starting another arc. Because like I said, we concluded one arc. Now we got this other arc. I'm going to leave the planet, and I got to go take this test in order to become a space wizard. Just like Anakin was able to complete the pod race without help, he also completes the test without help. So there's no drama here. And does he fail test? No. He passes test flawlessly. No problem for Anakin. I've passed flawlessly. So does that mean that he can become a space wizard now? And he become a space wizard? No. He fails for reasons outside of his control. Basically. Because if he had failed the test and they said, no, you can't become a space wizard, he would be depressed. But if he failed for some reason, you failed because you don't have X that you need, some kind of character thing or some extra skill you need, go listen to Obi-Wan Kenobi or Qui-Gon Jinn or whatever, or whatever you got to do to fix yourself. That's more part of the story. Then come back, take the test again, and we're going to see if you can pass this time. That would have been a story arc in there. We have a non-story arc here because he passes. Okay, great. Can I become a space wizard? No, you still can't. Why not? There's nothing that he has to fix here. He has this reason for things that are outside of his control. Do they say something about too old? Like you can't get younger. So that's a bad reason to have the character not be able to do that, because you can't get younger. He can't go away and get you. I mean, I guess maybe you could in like a sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, but that one's kind of weird. His force power is really good. He also, because he's told that he has, what is this, fear or something? And if that's true, then he would need to go and take care of his fear, right? Go and take care of your fear and then come back. Why is he afraid? He's afraid because his mother is a slave on a planet and he's alone and removed from her, and he's afraid for her, right? That she's going to have a hard life and might die. Well, that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to be afraid of to me. From the plot perspective and the world building perspective, I think this is a weird thing for the Jedi to be hung up on. The Jedi are for some reason hung up on the fact that, hey, you shouldn't be afraid that your mother is alone and a slave on a desert planet in a bad situation and that she might get hurt or die. Like, that seems reasonable. Now, because he could like solve that situation or deal with the fear in some way, but it's a weird thing for people to say. this is a weird thing that's preventing him from doing this. But at any rate, so he's not going to become a space wizard. What impact does this have? You would want it to have a lot. If that's everything that you ever wanted, I wanted to be a space wizard. Now I can't. What kind of impact on the story does it have? No impact on the story at all. Because Yoda tells Qui-Gon, you can't take him. He can't become your apprentice. This is not happening. And then 20 seconds later, Yoda tells Qui-Gon, you got to go back to Naboo because the queen's going back there. There's going to be a war, and you got to go protect the queen. So, Stranger has to get back in action in the war. Now, what would have happened if Anakin was his apprentice? Well, then Anakin would get to go on an adventure to war on this planet. What would happen? What should happen if he does not become an apprentice? He does not go on the adventure. You see why I'm saying Anakin is not agentive in this? Anakin was not agentive in this test. He just passed flawlessly. And then the reason that things happen to him are because of things that are largely outside of his control for weird reasons. It's things that the council imposes on him. And then he's not agentive here either. If he can't be trained, he can't go on the adventure. And this would be a major plot point. And that's why he's got to figure out how to pass that test. But as it happens, he's not an apprentice, and he gets to go with the stranger to war anyway, right? It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. The story happens in exactly the same way, whether or not he becomes an apprentice to Qui-Gon Jinn or not. I think that's a problem. Right? We end up in exactly the same place. It didn't matter. Now, I know it matters from the plot perspective. I'm separating story and plot. I've done that in several different videos. The plot is, the physical stuff we're seeing that's also has to do with our world building and all of that. But the story is different. The story is our underlying bones. Let me take a sip and see if we have comments. We have a comment that we think it's important to show him as a child because he never really grows up mentally. Okay. I can see that. It might have been better to do it another way, I think, but maybe it is. He has the ability. He lacks the emotional maturity to wield it properly. He's too old and has learned too much of his specialness. So it would be difficult for him to submit to the Force. Well, that would have been an interesting thing for Yoda to explain right there. You fail the test. You cannot become an apprentice. Why? Because you have to work on your emotional maturity. Okay. You are not submitting to the will of the Force. All right. That sounds like something. Yeah, that sounds like something that Yoda should have told him right there at the test. That's why you fail this test. You got to go work on that. Then for the next part of the movie, if it were Anakin's story, he would need to be working on his emotional maturity. And then once he had fixed his emotional maturity, then he could come back and pass the test. It's not the fear itself. It's the connection that the fear represents. It's the same event, but not the same character, mental, emotional relevance. You're talking about getting to go to war? Sure. I mean, sure. There are there are things like that. You would have some different mental kinds of state, but it's the same thing. He ends up in the same place. We're trying to destroy the big thing in orbit. He's ending up in the same place. But yeah, there are, I agree that, okay, he does say there is the emotional moment with Qui-Gon, where Qui-Gon says, no, I'm not allowed to train you. You have that brief moment. That would have been better, I think, that moment with Qui-Gon. How could we use that screen time to, again, have Qui-Gon try to teach him something? I can't train you because of, let's use what you were saying up here, that I can't train you. You failed because of the emotional maturity thing. but you could take the test again or whatever. And here's what you need to work on for the next half of this movie and demonstrate that you've got it. And then you'll be able to do it. Maybe something like that would have worked. So he goes to the war with Stranger anyway, which is odd because Stranger is going to war. How old is Anakin? Isn't he like 9 years old? Do you take, like, what do you ask the Stranger? Are you going to take this 9-year-old to a war zone? And Stranger, where you're going to be an active combatant? And the Stranger is like, yes, I am going to take this child into a war zone. I'm not going to leave him here on Coruscant with someone or whatever. I'm going to take him to the war zone planet. Once I get there, not only am I going to take him to the war zone, but I am going to take him into areas of active combat. Okay, right? And he's not the apprentice. I don't know what Qui-Gon Jinn is thinking here, but not only does he go to the planet, go to the war zone, he doesn't leave him with the Gungans or someplace with the non-combatants or anything like that because I got to go fight. Nope. Anakin doesn't have agency here. Qui-Gon's telling the 9-year-old kid, hey, we're headed into combat situation. And of course, there's nothing that says that Anakin knows anything about combat. In fact, he's been rejected from becoming an apprentice. So he's just there. For some reason, Stranger says a safe place. He finally decides some place is safe for Anakin, and that is in the cockpit of a starfighter. I don't know why. So he climbs in the cockpit, and Anakin and Qui-Gon says, stay there. That's where he's safe for some reason. So he climbs in the cockpit. Once again, Anakin has no agency here. What happens? The ship starts. He's like hitting buttons and things. The ship starts, and he's on autopilot. You would want Anakin, if he's going to be a hero, you would want Anakin to decide, you know what? I can help these people. I'm a great pilot. I'm going to fly up with the rest of the starfighters and go up there and try to take out this major thing flying around, in orbit that we got to destroy. Anakin never makes a decision to do that. Now, I think this has to do with his age. And this is another reason why I think it's strange that he's younger. He gets in and the autopilot takes him into battle. Like, did all the other pilots fly with autopilot up there? I mean, surely they actually made conscious decisions to fly up there into battle. Why is the autopilot loaded to go into battle? I don't know. That's a weird plot story building thing. But he sits down, and by coincidence, the autopilot engages and flies him into the middle of a starfighter battle, right? Think about that with Luke. When Luke takes off in his X-Wing in episode 4, Luke is making a conscious decision to get in the X-Wing and then to go fly into the battle at the Death Star. And that's important for Luke as a character in his hero's journey. I'm accepting the danger. I'm flying into battle. How weird would it have been if Luke had I just decided to sit here in an X-Wing while everybody else flew away. Oh, by chance, I'm on autopilot flying up to the Death Star to go into battle. That would have hurt Luke's character arc, right? It's much better to have the conscious decision. So this is why I'm saying another reason I'm saying that Anakin's arc is not good enough, even though they go from the same place to the same place, desert to starfighter hero. Anakin doesn't make the choice. He gets up there and he does a bunch of weird stuff, right? He's pressing random buttons, right? And this flies off. He doesn't say, I'm going to go. You never see the decision point, right? There doesn't seem to be any time in the film. It doesn't seem to be any time in the events of the film for Anakin to be taught about his pride and about his specialness. Destiny is meant to be in the service to the will of the Force. Well, I agree with that because, I'm only focusing on Anakin's arc right here. We got all this other stuff going around, and it's not clear who even the main character of the movie is. So yeah, I think there is probably not enough time to do a lot of things that if you were going to do this with Anakin, that you would have done, I think. I think if you rethought this movie and you said, this needs to be about Anakin, which arguably it does if the trilogy, the first trilogy, prequel trilogy, is about Anakin Skywalker and his fall and stuff like that, then I think this movie should be about Anakin. And that would, if we cut out a whole bunch of this other story, that, all these other events, we would have had more time to do a lot more development of Anakin Skywalker. And I think that would have helped the story. I think, and the whole movie, I think it would have. So for some reason, the stranger says, he's got the starfighter, flies into battle. Yeah, let's use that word. Random stuff happens. And he accidentally flies into the hangar of the big starship that needs to be destroyed, right? And then his starfighter shuts down. Shuts down. Starfighter shuts down. What happens after that? Oh, let's see. Inner light. I'm saying this, the time thing was done intentionally. The Jedi Council are focused on the political events going on at Coruscant. Qui-Gon Jinn is willing but not permitted due to the war and other concerns. I mean, okay. Those are all plot things. I mean, I see what you're saying. From the plot and all of these different events coming together, that's a reasonable explanation. When I'm talking about the story arc here, I want to be at a level either higher or underneath it, depending on how you conceptualize it, about what is happening with the story arc. And I think we needed more time in the story. We can still have, the war going on and things like that and time crunches, but the amount of runtime in the movie, there's not enough time in the movie to make all these things happen that we need to have happen with Anakin, because we're also trying to do other things. There can be time crunches with the war in the universe. That's fine. If you understand what I'm saying, am I explaining that well? I'm worried about there's run time in the movie, and there's also time as a plot element inside the movie. Starfighter shuts down. Now here, Anakin should fix this. This was a really weird part to me, because Anakin, his starfighter shuts down. He says, oh no, we're overheated or something like that, and things are shutting down, right? Because this appears to be a callback to Anakin fixing the pod racer. And I think something must have gotten cut, because this is when you're just watching Anakin, he flies in there and he's got battle droids around him and everything else, and the starfighter shut down. What should Anakin do? He should do something. He should use his powers, in this case, the fixing things powers, to put everything back together and activate the starship again. Then he would actually be agentive in this. But he doesn't. You leave him shut down, and then when you come back, you see the fighter powered up again. Oh, we're back. The fighter is powered up. And I watched that a couple of times, because I was like, wait a minute. I can't, that must have been filmed. Anakin actually being much more agentive and getting that starfighter back up and running. Not, it's now it's magically back. It can't just be the Force that is putting all of this together. The fighter is powered up. Okay. And then Anakin shoots torpedoes at the main power source of the starship, which blows it up. I didn't know that's how you were supposed to blow up that starship. Contrast that with the Death Star run in episode 4. The trench run is explained. All right, starfighters, this is exactly what you've got to do. You've got to close in. You've got to navigate down this trench, evading the gunfire. Your target is this exhaust port that can only be hit by proton torpedoes. We know that's what's got to happen. I have no idea when this battle starts in this episode, this movie, episode 1, how they need to go about doing this. And it appears that all the other starfighters don't as well. They're just, all the other pilots are flying around. They're not actually on a mission like, we got to hit this point of this starship in order to win the battle. Anakin just accidentally shoots torpedoes that happen to go into whatever this main power source is of this thing. We as the audience don't know that that's the key to victory, but it does happen to be. The whole thing blows up. That takes down the entire droid army, and Anakin is a hero. A war hero. Okay, now, let me go back to the blowing it up, because people make fun of the Death Star for being poorly designed. Because they're like, wait a minute, if you hit this thermal exhaust port with a proton torpedo, you can cause a chain reaction that results in the destruction of the space station. Yeah, but that's an extremely minimal design flaw. It's an extremely minimal design flaw, because first, you've got to have access to the Death Star plans. In order to know about that, you've got to have the Death Star plans. Not something easy to get. Okay, once you've got the Death Star plans, you've got to take those plans to military intelligence analysts, because they had to get them and then they had to analyze them. So you can't just because you got the plans doesn't mean you can find the weakness. You've got to have highly technical military analysts go over this thing, and then they find out that this is the flaw, and here's how to do it. Well, once you even find that out, you find that it's got to be hit with a special type of weapon, the proton torpedo, and that as it turns out, it is a shot. In order to make the proton torpedo go in, it's a shot that cannot be made by even advanced military targeting computers, right? It's such an intense shot, it can't even be. You have to actually be a space wizard and use magical powers in order to make that shot. The Death Star was not poorly designed. See what I'm getting at here? All of those things had to come together with Luke Skywalker being the magic space wizard, using magic powers to destroy the Death Star. And that's why he is a war hero, at the end of this and end of that. He does all the things he's supposed to do. He's agentive. He makes the decisions. He makes the decisions, and he makes the correct decision at the end, which enables the Death Star to be destroyed. Anakin has no agency here. We don't know what the mission is. And this thing is horrifically designed. I mean, this thing has got something that you can accidentally fly into the hangar, and when you do that, you shoot torpedoes at the main thing, which blows everything up and cripples your entire army and space fleet. I mean, the badly designed thing was whatever the droid control ship was that's floating around on top of, around Naboo. That thing was badly designed. So badly designed, it's a weird plot thing. The Death Star thing, not a thing. The bad design of this, definitely a bad thing. So Anakin ends up as a war hero. But Anakin, being a hero here, is nowhere near as satisfying as Luke Skywalker, for all the reasons that we've just talked about. Anakin Skywalker is happenstance through here. He's happenstance. I know people go, it's the Force, it's the Force. Well, Luke had the Force too, and Luke still had to be agentive in his own story and make the correct decisions. Anakin, as soon as he left Tatooine, lost agency, and he still ends up blowing this thing up. And then we're supposed to celebrate him as a hero at the end. He's a hero. He gets to have a party. And he gets to be a apprentice space wizard. And this is when Obi-Wan comes back and says, I'll train you. They had that brief meeting together, and then the apprentice, and then, okay, now I'll take you as my apprentice. So supposedly, that's the hero's journey, that now we have Anakin Skywalker as a hero. Oh, and by the way, so now also here, the entire planet of Naboo is in debt to him, right? And he knows, so I know the Queen's elected, but the Queen and all the royalty of the planet. And even though that is the case, no one offers to help him buy his mom. I mean, you would think that after you've rescued, after you've saved this entire planet with all of the planetary resources and knowing everything about their government and all of the connections, that somebody would be like, hey, you know what we should do for our war hero here? We should even let him borrow, if not give him, let him borrow enough money to go and buy his mom out of slavery. But that doesn't happen. because his mom's still got to be a slave for plot reasons later in other movies. But that doesn't make any sense because, like, you know, somebody on that planet would help him get by his mom, especially since, you know, the beautiful woman who is now the queen, we find out, is so shocked there is slavery anyway. You'd think that she'd have enough money to do that. I don't know. That's weird. But we've gone on long here. But let me check comments and see what's going on. But that's my X-ray of Anakin's story arc. And I really don't think it works very well. And why you would put a main power source for the starship and the docking pad is terrible design. Right. This is terrible design. This is terrible design. Luke was an agent of the Force. Anakin was a nexus of the Force. Okay. That's plot things. I know, but see, is that ever said? Like, you know, there was a vergence in the Force. That's said, and that's used to explain a lot of stuff. You know, Luke may have been an agent of the Force, but he was still agentive in his story. The key part, you know, where Luke actually became the hero and was going to be able to win is when he made the decision to turn off the targeting computer, because that whole story is about which is better, technology or faith. Faith being the Force and all of that. If he chooses technology, if Luke chooses technology, he's going to stay with the targeting computer and he's going to miss the shot. And then the Death Star is going to be able to blow up Yavin, and it'll be you know, the story will end tragically. But Luke makes the correct decision. You want to have faith. You want to use the Force. He turns off the targeting computer. He's agentive in that decision. It's possible Jedi apprentices have a vow of poverty. Well, I mean, possible. I don't know. I haven't heard that. But it seems like you don't even have, if he's got a vow of poverty, you don't have to give him the money. You could just take him over with somebody who's rich from the planet and go buy his mother. Anyway, I've enjoyed this discussion, but it has gone on much. We had a long live stream last night, and we've had a much longer one today, or a long one today. I don't want to do that every time because there are other things to do, but I want to talk about that. I like talking about these things. That's why I decided to start this the morning grind kind of show to talk about something in the Geekverse, because who else am I going to talk to about these things? So it can be you. So thank you so much for being here, everybody, and especially Inner Light. Lots of great comments. I appreciate it. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the discussion. Maybe this helps something. I mean, this is all the stuff that I was thinking of when I was told, because I don't think this is a very good arc. I was told to study this movie and specifically Anakin's arc for a story that I was writing. This is why I was doing that. And so I did, and I did this X-ray on Anakin, and this is what I came up with from the story perspective. And that's when I was going, I don't think this is really all that great. This is not a good structure, is what I came up with. That if you're trying to use Anakin's story as a model for a different story or one you're writing or something like that, I wouldn't. I would think about these things that I was talking about. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean they're right. But I hope it's a starting point for a discussion. It has been with Inner Light and things like that. So I hope it's a starting point for discussion and further thought if you're thinking about it or you're trying to write something, because it's what I'm thinking about. So, all right. Ordinarily, we would talk about how to improve our life. Think of it this way. Like Lucifer, Anakin was primarily driven by his pride, specialness, sense of destiny. I would love to be able to use Anakin's corruption arc or his fall from being a hero, because we didn't make Anakin fall so far in the story. I would love to also use, to analyze the fall as far as a Luciferian arc. And I would love it if it were driven by pride. I'm not sure I see it. Brianna's the specialist in that. We might have to bring her on because she did this X-ray, the same kind of X-ray over the corruption arc, because she's also doing a kind of, it's not the fall of Lucifer, but it's a corruption kind of story. So that's why she was studying it. Okay. Ordinarily, I'm going to stop that. Ordinarily, we would talk about how to improve life, but I don't have a whole lot of time. But remember, what you should do is write down your list of 3 things that if you did them between now and the wind down tonight in about 12 hours, that you would be happy with your day and say that it was a good day. So abbreviated kind of help out your life, help out life and plan life part here. But do that. Get your 3 rocks, right? The 3 big rocks. And you probably know what they are. I'm still trying to configure this email server because I try and it's just still not working. It's taking time, but I've got to get that done. It's a big thing to get done because I need to use that in order to communicate about the ritual playtest and things like that. So I'm trying to get that done. So that's one of my big rocks. I've got to get out the playtest rules and email people on the playtest list. and I need to investigate Tabletop Simulator. So those are my 3 big rocks. Have yours, put them down, and then we will check in tonight on the wind down. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're watching on a replay, thank you so much. I'm glad you were here, and I hope you enjoyed it. All right. Later, everybody.